If you're a founder of a high ticket info business and you're stuck at a couple hundred grand a month, then you need to stop tracking your cost per lead immediately and you need to do this instead. In today's video, I'm going to share with you why I believe tracking your cost per lead is arguably one of the most dangerous things you can do for your marketing and customer acquisition at scale for your high ticket coaching or course creation business, and what you should be doing instead. If you're new to the channel, my name is Sebastian Robeck, and you might have seen some of my videos before, but I have worked as the CMO for Closers.io in the past. I've also been the director of marketing for an 8-figure regenerative medicine company. And over the last few years, my team and I here at 7FM have been helping info brands that are stuck at a couple hundred grand a month scale up to multiple 6 and even 7 figures a month and do it without losing their mind. And we do it really, really well. So everything that I'm sharing here on the channel comes from direct experience. None of this is theory. So let's dive right into today's video. Number one, why your cost per lead is potentially the most dangerous vanity metric in marketing in general. Number two, the multiple 6-figure mistake that I see founders making practically every single month. What 8-figure businesses are actually tracking instead of their front-end lead cost. Number four, the real metrics that predict whether you'll scale or if you'll stay stuck at a couple hundred grand a month. And lastly, how you can start setting up tracking that actually tells you whether or not you're winning and profitable. So let's dive right in. So I want to start with an example here from one of our clients recently where they were doing a few hundred grand a month, roughly 400 grand a month to be exact. Their cost per lead had jumped from $23 a lead to $47 a lead. And a lot of this was due to us shifting more of our budget to YouTube and away from Facebook for multiple reasons, which I will talk about in other videos. And as you could probably expect, the founder freaked out a little bit. They were like, hey guys, our lead cost has literally, more than doubled. What's going on here? We need to pause things. We need to restructure the marketing. It's not going to work. And a lot of their sentiment was around like, we can't afford leads at $47. And then, you see your competition getting really, really cheap leads. So, right, you assume that this is a bad thing. And it's very common for founders at this level to make a mistake that can easily, in my experience, I've seen it cost businesses literally multiple 6 figures in cash just by making decisions on the marketing based off of what you're seeing on the front end lead cost side of things. So the reality was that these $47 leads that we were getting from our YouTube traffic were closing at much higher rates than the Facebook leads. And yes, the Facebook leads were literally 3 times as cheap than the YouTube leads, but they were just not converting at nearly the same clip. So when we track the downstream effect of shifting more of our budget to YouTube, what we found is that the net CPA on the high ticket offer was actually significantly cheaper despite the front end leads being much more expensive. And the reason this happens is very, very common. I see this amongst founders, amongst marketers, and even lots of agencies. I've had lots of experience working alongside really, really big agencies. And it's still a very common pitfall that a lot of people are making, which is obsessing over the front end metric. And I believe that a lot of it has to do with dopamine, honestly, because it's very, very easy to look at, say your Facebook ad tracking dashboard and see you're getting leads for $15 and you're getting a ping every, couple of minutes of a new lead coming in. And it's like amazing. Oh my goodness. Like we're getting so much throughput, right? There's no way this could possibly not, result in profitable scale and good things happening, right? But again, the problem is you can have lots of volume and a lot of that volume could be junk leads and doesn't actually convert to sales. And so what happens is a lot of founders and marketing teams get obsessed over this front end. And so they don't track what actually matters, which is the back end. The back end is ultimately the holy grail. It's like, what is it costing to get somebody to actually become a paid client? And what are you making every single time somebody does that? And what is that customer worth for the business in the long haul? So the way this translates to the front end is you actually end up optimizing for the wrong thing. And this is a little bit of an exaggeration here, but honestly, I've seen this happen many, many times before where you literally could derail the trajectory and growth of your business just by optimizing for the wrong thing. It sounds simple, but it's very, very foundational and it happens all the time. So here's a little bit more of an insight into why, again, in my experience and in my opinion, optimizing for your cost per lead really can kill the growth of your business. So as the saying goes, a lead is not a lead is not a lead, right? So a $10 lead from your TikTok traffic is definitely not going to be the same as a $50 lead from, say, LinkedIn B2B ads. It's also not going to be the same as a $35 lead from YouTube discovery or YouTube content retargeting ads. So different traffic sources have different intent levels with leads. And when I say a lead, it could be a VSL opt-in, it could be a low ticket buyer even, which tend to be much more higher quality than leads from any traffic source. But still, there's still varying degrees of intent levels, even in different funnels. And ultimately, bottom line is that different intent levels equal different, different conversion rates. So you need to take these things into account. And the trap that's easy to fall into is, again, you can see your competitors bragging about their, oh my God, like, dude, we get fucking $6 leads on Facebook, bro. Like, it's amazing. And it's like, oh my God, like our lead cost is $35. We must be absolutely failing. We must be headed for the shitter, right? And so then you end up chasing cheaper leads, right? You're like, well, the fix here must be to drop the front end cost, which is a very logical decision, very logical action step based off of seeing your competitors get cheap leads and you thinking that you need the same. But then you wonder why the revenue drops, because you're actually optimizing for the wrong outcome. So what actually matters, the bottom line, as I alluded to earlier, is it's not about what you're necessarily paying to get somebody in the door. Yes, that's important. Yes, we look at this for every one of our clients. It's not like we completely disregard what our front end cost is. We just throw it out the window, because ultimately everything comes down to math and economics. And so we know for every client of ours, like, what are the economics at scale of what's workable and what's not, aka like what can we actually afford based off of our back end conversion rates. But everything starts on the back end, right? It's like, what are we paying to get somebody to become a client? And then ultimately, as I mentioned earlier, what are they worth after they buy from us? So someone purchases your 10K front end coaching program. Okay, do they purchase anything else from you? Do they come to a live event? Do you have a back end offer, a back end / continuation offer? Do they purchase any of that? For how long do they typically stay? All of these things matter more than just what are we paying to get somebody to enter into our ecosystem. So now I want to dive into what 8-figure businesses track instead. And again, this is directly from my experience and my time as the CMO for Closers.io for about 9 months in 2022. I've talked about that many times here on the channel. This is also directly from my experience as the head of marketing for an 8-figure regenerative medicine company. It's a mouthful. And most importantly, this is directly from the dozens of clients we've worked with over the last few years, taking over their marketing departments for them and scaling their marketing to multiple 6 and 7 figures a month, and a lot of ad spend managed within that. So metric number one that you definitely want to be tracking is your cost per qualified lead. Now, there's some nuance here, because this is going to also depend on the types of funnels that you're currently running. So for example, if you have more of a standard opt-in style funnel where you've got add to an opt-in page with maybe a VSL or a thank you page on the back end, and then an application, then a booking, you'll want to track your cost per qualified application, right? So again, even tracking your qualified opt-ins, it's really irrelevant. Like, you can't really do that unless you have some sort of qualitative component to it. And, some people have a funnel where maybe, I've seen this work in some cases. It's not as common, but you can have an opt-in where you have 1 or 2 extra questions on the front end to qualify, just where they're at, their situation, their intent levels. But what I've seen work the best is having some sort of a mid to longer form application on the back end of either your opt-in or your VSL. If you're running ads to a more traditional call funnel, by the way, and this is a side note, but I would highly recommend that you test removing your opt-in to reduce friction in the funnel. That's a test that we've run for lots of our clients and seen great success with, but it's a side note. So again, you don't just want to track any lead that comes through or any application. Yes, you want to track it, but you want to really pay attention and prioritize the leads that are coming through that actually fit your specific criteria. So this is also subjective, because this is going to depend on your specific market, your offer, what a qualified lead or a qualified application means to you. Underneath this qualified lead category also exists a qualified call booking. So that's also something really, really important. I'll give you guys an example here. So in many of our clients' sort of funnel ecosystems, what's very, very typical is you have some sort of front end asset, let's say a VSL funnel, If you've got a back-end application, then you've got a call booking. Now, there's multiple ways you can track a qualified call. Again, I'm going to, for the sake of keeping this video as short and to the point as possible, I'm not going to go too deep on this. I'll go into it in other videos, but you can track a qualified call simply potentially as someone who fills out the application, and based off the type form logic or the application logic, you deem them as qualified and they book a call, and that is a qualified call. You can then go a level further, which we've seen work within many of our clients' ecosystems, is tracking a qualified call based off of who actually confirms their call. So for example, someone fills out an application, they are quote unquote qualified according to the type form logic or the application. But the problem with going just based off of that is that people can lie on their applications. We see it all the time. It's very, very common. They lie about what they have, what they don't have, what they're actually doing versus what they're not doing. It's very, very common. And it makes sense because people are also only seeing you for a few minutes before filling out an application to work with you. So they're still skeptical. Their walls are still up. It's very, very normal. And so if they fill in that application, they're qualified, and then they book a call, the next level you can go is having a dedicated appointment confirmation person on your sales team, which I highly recommend you do, and have that person be solely responsible for confirming all of the inbound appointments that get booked onto the sales team's calendar. And then the people that do reply back to a text or answer a phone call and have a conversation with that person and do confirm that they are good for their time, and you can potentially have that person take them through a little bit of a triage, which also works really well, just as a human-to-human touch point before their call with a closer, or even before their call with a setter, depending on how your funnel is structured. Doing that not only helps incredibly with show rates, by the way, which is a side note, but if you track the cost per confirmed qualified call, that's, again, a layer deeper that you can go, and I would recommend that you at least test doing that. The third layer here within qualified lead, if you really want to get even more granular, and this works particularly well if you're spending a lot, like at least, $4 to $5 grand a day, this is going to work really, really well for you. You've got a lot of volume coming through your sales system and a lot of appointments being booked, is tracking a qualified call based off of the sales team's qualitative and quantitative feedback. So based off of what your sales team actually says, and this is where having your sales team scoring their leads, aka scoring their calls, comes into play. And if you can do that well and do it efficiently at scale, which you got to have really, really tight systems and ops on the sales side for that, that can also be incredibly, incredibly beneficial for the marketing to understand. And that also can help with feeding better data back to your pixel and optimizing around higher quality people. There's a whole slew of things you could do there, but that's the level you want to go to. And as you can see, it starts to get deeper and deeper when you just go past the initial front end lead or application, or even the front end cost per call, because the cost per call is also, in my opinion, can be a vanity metric, because you want to know, what does it cost us to get somebody to confirm, to get somebody to show up, and then also what does it cost us to actually speak to somebody who we believe, based off the sales team's qualitative feedback, is qualified. Next up, metric number 2, again, cost per sales conversation, right? So this is really, what does it cost to get someone on the phone? So I should have named this cost per live call, but cost per actually having a conversation with somebody rather than just getting somebody on the calendar. Getting someone on the calendar, yes, those costs are going to matter, but really it's like, what does it cost to get somebody on the phone, right? And this is where you need to account for your booking rates and your show rates, so it's not just the initial front end. So you can notice the trend here is we're going past, for all the key metrics, where we're going past the level or the layer 1 of that action that somebody takes, whether it's an application or a booking or whatever it is. Of course, metric number 3, you need to be tracking your cost per sale. At the end of the day, your CPA is going to be extremely indicative of your performance. And this comes especially important when you're looking at the difference in performance between multiple traffic sources, right? So you want to be able to look at your CPA from Facebook versus YouTube. Again, asterisk on that. As I mentioned in other videos, attribution is getting more and more messy, so you need to be aware of that, but it's still something you want to look at because at the end of the day, you're really optimizing for your cost to acquire a paid client. So you need to be paying much more attention to that. Now, of course, some of the front-end metrics can be leading indicators of that, but you need to know which of those front-end metrics to look for, and your cost per lead is not necessarily always going to tell you the trends on your CPA. Metric number 4 is, and this is, you guys probably see Hormozy talk a lot about this, but I cannot tell you how incredibly important this is, especially if you're looking to scale, right? Like if you want to get to 6, 7, 800 a month, a million plus a month, you need to start prioritizing your LTV to CAC ratio, because if you are always playing, excuse me, if you're always playing the get new clients game, which is starting from zero every month, you're going to hate your business as a founder. Everyone's going to be stressed out all the time. It's just not going to be fun in the long run. So you need to be looking at what is every single high ticket client worth to us in the long run, and how can we increase that LTV and decrease the CAC ultimately. Now, also, the reason this is important is because you don't necessarily always need to decrease your CAC if you can increase your LTV, right? If your LTV is really, really tight, then yeah, you're going to need to work hard to bring your CAC down. But if your cost to acquire, if your LTV is really, really healthy, you can afford a higher CAC on the front end because you've got the revenue on the back end to make up for it. So let's dive a little deeper here, right? So again, these are some of the real metrics that are going to predict your scalability to multiple high 6 and 7 figures a month in your info business. So, and these are the things that we look at and track for every single one of our 7 and 8 figure clients. Number one, again, is your lead quality score, right? So you want to look at the percentage of your leads and applications who actually qualify for your offer. Again, there's multiple ways you can track this, and it's going to vary, but you want to just put the intention in your mind right now, if you're a founder watching this, and relay this to your marketing team, that you want to start going deeper than just, again, front-end volume and cost, because you can have $10 leads where 5% of those leads, or 5% of those applications, for example, actually qualify for your offer, versus you can have $40 leads on the front end where 60 to 70% of them qualify. And we see this all the time, especially with offers where, if they're more B2C focused, and think, health, relationships, make money, that sort of thing. If you're teaching something to more of a consumer-based audience rather than B2B, we scenario happen when we shift more budget to YouTube. Very, very common. Now, it actually tends to be the opposite with B2B, where we tend to have, if we have a B2B offer, we tend to focus more on Facebook. I've just seen much better success with Facebook for B2B offers, and you tend to see higher lead costs on the front end there. But if you have the right quality, it all works out on the back end. Because again, in my opinion, I would say 90 to 95% of the time, quality is going to be quantity. And that's in my opinion, okay? Now, again, asterisk here, that is not to say that you should completely throw out volume, because you do ultimately, at the end of the day, most businesses are going to need volume of leads to hit their targets, but you don't want to fall into the trap of, again, over leveraging yourself on volume and trying to drive down your front end costs as much as possible, while in the meantime sacrificing quality, and ultimately it's going to lead to a revolving door with your sales teams. Your profitability is going to suffer, etc. We also look heavily at intent signals. So this is where we have that really, really tight bridge between marketing and sales. So we're looking at how engaged are these leads before they talk to the sales team? Are they consuming content, watching testimonials? Are they asking questions? Because ultimately, high intent leads will always convert, 3, 5, 10x better than low intent leads. So we're always looking at, what are the intent levels coming in? How can we bring those intent levels up through marketing and sales efforts? We also do look at source-specific conversion rates. So, for example, for most of our clients, if we're spending a couple $100,000 a month, it's almost always going to be spread across at least 2 traffic platforms. Most of the time, that's Facebook and YouTube. Occasionally, it's a third, but these are the 2 most common. Hence why we do look at conversion rates from different sources. Again, attribution as it currently stands and customer journeys can make that difficult for the reasons I've mentioned in previous videos. However, it's still something we do look at, and we do put quite a lot of focus into, because again, you can have $10 leads on Facebook, you can have $40 leads on YouTube, but your YouTube conversion rates can be significantly higher and your net CPA is therefore lower, and everything actually shapes up to be a lot better and more profitable than it does on Facebook. And ultimately, we want to look at speed to cash. So how long does it take for someone to go from being a lead or an application to actual cash in the bank? Because if we can reduce the amount of time it takes for somebody to convert from being either a lead or an application or even a booked call to actually becoming a paid client, it's just going to mean better cash flow and more ability to scale at a faster rate for the business. And ultimately, sometimes, and more often than not, a worse or a higher cost per lead can actually pay back faster. Asterisk here again, this is all nuanced, not always black and white. This is not always the case. We have had plenty of instances where a higher lead cost wasn't actually better for the business, but that tends to be, in our experience, that tends to be what happens less often than if we actually try and drive up our front end costs just slightly. We actually get better people coming through, and therefore the net CPA benefits tremendously from it. So let's talk about attribution. Again, I've talked a lot about this in previous videos, but what you really, really need to understand with attribution here, and I'm not going to go through every single one of these micro points. You're going to have this Notion doc in the description of this video, but you need to understand that customer journeys are messy. They're complex, right? So as I've mapped out here, somebody could see your ad on Facebook or YouTube. They don't click. Then they go and Google your company name, or they Google your personal name, whatever it is. Then they watch a YouTube video. Then they finally opt in through an organic search. So they might go and after watching another 2 or 3 YouTube videos of yours, they might then go and opt in for your VSL or purchase your low ticket, or somehow become a lead in your funnel. And then what happens is that Facebook doesn't get any credit, right? Let's say you're using Hyros, for example. Facebook doesn't get the credit for the sale if you're using Last Click or Scientific. Google gets the credit. But you could say that, well, technically it was the Facebook ad that somebody saw that then got them even remotely interested in coming to our YouTube channel and our organic search in the first place. So it does get messy. Now, here's how we track it, and here's how we look at attribution. So we look at all 4 layers, and all 4 layers are, number 1, first touch attribution. So again, we do want to know where are most of our clients coming from initially, okay? Because it's just helpful to know and helpful to see. We do look at last touch attribution. So again, asterisk on all this, which is that somebody could, somebody could go through 18 different touch points, and the very, very last thing that they do is they open an email from us, but they don't click the email. They don't actually take an action. They just open the email and they read some of it. Say they read 60, 70% of it. Something shifts in their mind because it was a belief shifting email. They're now much more open, or maybe it was a social proof email and they saw a testimonial from somebody that they really resonated with. Then boom, a setter calls them, and they call them just at the right time, just as somebody themselves on their own accord came to the realization that they want to work with you. And then a setter books them onto a closer's calendar, they convert. Well, you could technically say that the last touch there was the email. You could also say the last touch was the setter. So do you give the attribution to the marketing, to the sales? Well, as you can see, it gets messy, which is again why, as I've talked about in previous videos, our holy grail within all this attribution talk is MER, marketing efficiency. How much are we spending? How much cash is coming back into the business? Lastly, and this is arguably probably the most important piece of attribution that we actually pay attention to, which is what the sales team is telling us. What are people saying on sales calls? Are people mentioning specific things? Oh, I looked you up on YouTube and I really, really loved all the content you have on there. Or maybe they're mentioning specific videos, or maybe they're mentioning specific testimonials that they've been seeing from our retargeting or whatever it is. Those are the things that we take into account. So lastly, let's talk about how to actually set up tracking that's going to lead to better profitability, better scalability, and just a healthier business rather than trying to drive down your front end lead costs. So step 1 is you need to define obviously what a qualified lead actually is. So again, qualified lead, I'm going to put little parentheses here, because this could mean several things, right? So a lead could mean a couple different things depending on your business, depending on the kind of funnels that you're running at the moment. But ultimately, a qualified lead is not just going to be the name, email, phone number, or even necessarily just their application answers. It's really, okay, who is the person that fits our ideal customer profile? Now, you probably have a good idea of this already. If you're doing a couple $100,000 a month, I'd be shocked if you didn't. But there's also often opportunity to make this even more clear and even more defined. And again, a lot of this is not going to come from necessarily only looking at your application responses, but also from talking to your sales team and having somebody on your team listening to sales calls, which again, as I've mentioned, is something we put a lot of energy and focus into for our clients because it just pays off in so many different ways. So again, obviously you're going to want to look at things like, do these people have the budget? Do they have the need? Do they have the authority, meaning do they have the actual ability to make the decision on the call? And do they have the timelines that line up with who your ideal client is? Step 2 is, as I've been essentially hitting on this entire video, is you want to track your full funnel, not just the top, okay? So you don't just want to look at the front end lead cost. You want to obviously look at your qualified lead or qualified application, your booked call rate, your show rate, offer rate, close rate, and ultimately down to the actual payment coming through. You need to know your conversion rates at every single stage. And this is actually a perfect time to mention this. If you feel like you don't have full clarity on all of these different conversion rates and costs per booked call, well, you probably have your cost per booked call, but cost per qualified call, cost per live call, aka your cost per show, and all of the different nuanced conversion rates throughout your funnel, then I would recommend that you go into the description of this video, pick up the $1 Million a Month KPI dashboard. It's totally free. It's the exact tool that I use as a CMO inside of closers.io, and that our team here at 7FM uses for all of our 7 and 8 figure clients to very, very easily track all of our key marketing and sales metrics. So you'll get a really, really clear and easy to read snapshot of where you're currently at and how your performance looks, or what your performance looks like. And then more importantly, inside the dashboard, there's also a growth modeling tool. It's called the Operators tab or the Operators view, where you can actually plug in your current metrics and then plug in your revenue target for where you want to go inside the business, and it will spit out the exact numbers that you need to hit inside the business to achieve those revenue targets. So I'd highly recommend you pick that up. Again, it's in the description. And ultimately, you need to identify where the real bottlenecks are in your funnel and in your client acquisition. And again, that dashboard is going to help you tremendously with that. Step 3, obviously, you need to have proper attribution. If you're doing a few $100,000 a month already, you're very likely using a tool like Hyros or RedTrack. If you're not, please do immediately. And just start paying more attention to the multiple touch points throughout your funnel: first touch, last touch, and the multi-touch stages in between the first and the last touch before somebody becomes a client. And most importantly, start getting feedback from your sales team on what prospects are actually saying on their calls. Step 4, calculate your true, in italics, your true CAC. Okay, so what I mean by this is you want to include, so let me back up. What founders often do, what's very, very common, is you look at, okay, ad spend divided by total number of new high ticket clients for the month. There's our cost per acquisition. Well, that's really your gross CAC, or your gross cost per acquisition. What you really want to be looking at, and what obviously you want to look at the gross cost, but obviously you want to look at your gross cost to acquire. However, you also, in addition, want to be looking at your true CAC, which is going to be including all of your costs. So your ad spend, your team salaries, your softwares, sales team commissions, of course, everything that goes into running the business. You want to include all those expenses, and then you want to divide that by the number of high ticket clients that you acquired in the month. Obviously, not just your leads. That's your real cost per acquisition. So again, you're including your cost to deliver, not just your cost to acquire. And that's going to give you a much clearer picture of, okay, what does our actual profitability look like here? Step 5 is you need to be regularly monitoring your leading indicators. So things like your quality score trends. So if you are implementing some sort of a lead scoring system or an application scoring system, or lastly, like I mentioned earlier, a call scoring system from your closing team after they speak with somebody, you need to be monitoring those quality scores regularly to see, okay, are things trending up, down? How do we course correct? You need to be regularly getting sales team feedback and gauging intent levels, listening to calls, finding out what people are saying, objections, questions, beliefs that people are holding, that they're expressing on these calls. All of these things are incredibly, incredibly important, because not just for, getting ideas for new ads and all that, which I talk a lot about, of course, but also all these qualitative pieces of feedback from the sales side are going to inform you even more on how well the marketing is performing, and where you can get even more granular. And this, again, works particularly well if you're spending heavily. Again, ideally, if you're spending at least 100,000+ a month on ads, this becomes really, really helpful, where you can actually start tracking your quality scores down to the individual campaign. So you can feed quality scores from your CRM back into a tool like Hyros, and then you can start pulling reports and looking at your individual campaigns, and then even your individual ads, and seeing what ads and what campaigns and what, targeting options or whatever, and what creatives are driving, the most amount of qualified people, and B, unqualified, because you want both, right? You want to be able to cut the campaigns and the creatives that are driving a higher amount of unqualified call bookings or leads, and then obviously shift more budget into the campaigns and the creatives that are driving a higher amount of qualified people. So that's also why it's incredibly important. Next up, you do want to monitor your source-specific performance. So how is Facebook performing versus YouTube or LinkedIn or any other traffic sources that you're running? Or if you're also running heavily on Google search, which is a very, very common thing, you also want to look at the intent levels and the performance at the net CPA level between all those traffic sources. And lastly, you want to look at your speed to conversion metrics. So the time it takes for someone to go from a lead to a booking, from a booking to a show, from a booking to a close, and ultimately from a lead to close as well. So you can get the full picture of the entire customer journey and sales cycle timeline. So that's it for today's video. I tried to make this one a little bit shorter. Don't know if I succeeded. We're still at like the 30-minute mark or something like that. I'm trying to shorten these videos. I would love to hear your feedback, by the way. If you have any feedback, let me know in the comments if you guys would like to see these videos be a little bit shorter. If you like the format, if you have any feedback at all on how I can improve this content so I can best deliver what's in my head and what's in my team's experience to you guys so you can use it to improve the profitability of your info businesses. Bottom line, ultimately, as I've hit on probably more times than enough here in this video, is you need to stop optimizing for vanity metrics that give you a hit of dopamine and make you feel good, because those vanity metrics are not necessarily going to be what scales your business in the way you want to scale it and with the profitability levels that you're looking for. And instead, you want to start optimizing for the metrics that make you money. And if you want help with that, again, go ahead, pop into the description, grab the $1 Million a Month KPI dashboard. It's a very easy to use spreadsheet tool. You'll be able to plug in your numbers, get a snapshot. Like I mentioned, you'll be able to see all your key conversion rates at a glance. And then most importantly, you'll be able to use our growth modeling tool to plug in your current numbers and your baselines, along with what your revenue target is for the business. So if you're doing 300 grand a month or 400 grand a month and you want to get to $1 million, you're going to know exactly what each of your key metrics needs to look like at that scale level. So you can actually start to reverse engineer and back into those numbers to begin scaling to the levels you want to get to. So hope you found this video helpful, and I'll see you guys in the next one.